Okay, so as we were saying, so our third and final presentation for the evening will be given by Sandra Martinez and Beth Menzies. Both are coordinators with our social and emotional learning department. They're going to share information that will help you recognize and learn ways to help your children, especially during these times of virtual learning. Take it away, gals.
Thank you so much. I think we're still waiting on Beth, so when she comes on, we'll allow her to help along. But yes, my name is Sandra Martinez. I'm the Family Engagement Coordinator for the Social and Emotional Learning Department. And I'm so happy to be here today to talk to you about recognizing stress in our children and ways that we can help them. Next slide, please. So we have gone through a heck of a week already, right? Lots of things going on, really all month, all this past year. So I would really just invite you right now to just breathe, right? Take a few moments and just inhale and exhale. So if we could just maybe do this together, okay? If you have anything in your hand, I invite you to put it down, maybe put it on your desk or on your lap, just put it down. And I want you to place your feet firmly on the floor and put your hands on your lap. Close your eyes if you're comfortable in doing so. I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose. I want you to hold it. And I want you to exhale through your mouth. Let's do that again, listening to your breath. Take a deep breath in through your nose. And then exhale through your mouth. And one last time, continuing to listen to your breath, take a deep breath in through your nose. And exhale through your mouth. Then you're welcome to open your eyes now. And this is just a really quick way to really ground yourself and be present, be in the moment. This is one of the techniques or strategies that we're going to be talking about later for our kids. And it's just a mindfulness technique that you can really do at any time. You can do it if you have 10 seconds, if you have 20 minutes, an hour, whatever you have. This is just a really quick way to do this. You know, we encourage you to do this whenever you're in your car, obviously not driving, but you know, not closing your eyes. You can definitely do the breathing. You can do this when you're, you know, when you wake up, before you go to bed. This is just a really great opportunity, a really great strategy to really ground yourself and just take a moment for yourself because you deserve it. Next slide, please.
Hi there, Sandra, I'm here.
Hi there, Beth. Okay, do you want to go ahead and do this slide?
Sure. Thank you guys so much for coming. We're so excited to share these strategies with you. I want you just to take a moment just for you. It's important for you to take a moment just for you and think about everything that's stressing you out right now. And if you have some paper nearby, just take a minute to stop and jot and collect your thoughts. Write it down, get it out. So, you know, here's some examples, you know, maybe family stressing you out, maybe the pandemic, maybe all the political unrest, racial injustice, distance learning, your job, health, finances, you name it. Stress can come from external sources like family, jobs, friends, everything. But stress can also come from internal sources or the stress that we put on ourselves. So our idea of what a perfect parent is or does compared to who we are can stress us out. Our personal expectations sometimes creates a break from our reality, and that can cause stress. So let's just take a minute, collect those. You've got them on a piece of paper. Now just crumple up that piece of paper and throw it in the corner. We're going to let those stressors go for the next 30 minutes. Next slide, please.
I'm on mute. So here's, now that you've thought about your stressors, right, and what's stressing you out. So here's a list of stressors that are impacting our kids. The news, right, things that we're seeing with politics, you know, the Capitol situation, the pandemic, they're seeing people getting shot, getting vaccinations, on TV. You have big changes in families, right? Sometimes, some people have had families pass away because of COVID, and that can be very impactful. Are you surprised by any of these? Do any of these surprise you? Because if you notice, some of the stressors that you're experiencing, your kids are experiencing as well. And stress can really affect anyone, even kids. In toddlers or pre-K age kids, separation from parents can cause a stress, right? So if you drop them off at daycare, if you drop them off at pre-K, that's a stress. Older kids are stressed by academics and social pressures, especially when they're trying to fit in. And school, right? School's a big pressure, particularly when kids are afraid to make mistakes or who are afraid of just not being good at something. Major life changes like divorce, death in the family, moving, having a baby brother or baby sister at home, that can all really shake your child's sense of security and really leads to anxiety. Some kids may be too busy after school too, right? So those, a packed schedule, that can cause stress. And really kids' stresses can be intensified by more than just what's happening in their own lives. They're experiencing worrying about relatives' illnesses, the loss of the job of their parents, traumas like a pandemic. And yes, I did say trauma because a pandemic, a world event like that is definitely trauma on a child. And it's really trauma on us as well. So when you see news headlines and images showing natural disasters, terrorism, when kids see and hear terrible things in the news, they may worry about some bad, something bad might happen to them or someone that they love. And so when these events are combined, then the stress is just magnified. It just makes it worse. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the different types of stress, because not all stress is bad. The Center of the Development Child, this is at Harvard University, provides 3 different types of stress. There's good stress or positive stress, tolerable stress, and bad or toxic stress. So nature gives us this ability to be able to spot danger and respond to it, right? So when we're faced with dangerous situations, our body and our brains kick into flight or fight mode. But we don't like to stay in that state for long, right? We like to deal with danger quickly so we can feel safe again. So the good positive stress, this happens when we confront a situation we believe we can manage or control. For example, let's say this little girl is coasting down, she's on her bike and she's coasting down a hill with just one hand on the handlebars, right? When she sees a pothole, she feels stress. She starts feeling that, butterflies in the stomach, maybe her heart starts racing a little bit. And she instinctively puts her other hand down on the other bar. In less than a second, her brain goes in survival mode, right? It tells her heart to start pumping blood to her legs. Her vision gets a little better because her pupils open to take in more light. And she's just, she just wants to, she wants this because of this action. So she guides herself around the hole and continues safely down the slope. So that's good, right? It's keeping us safe. That's a good stress. The brain loves success and will store memories of this event, right? And so the next time this child faces a dangerous situation like this positive memory will help her deal with it. So good stress makes us stronger, ready to take on new challenges. And it's normal and it's part of a healthy development. But our ability to deal with stress, so now let's talk about tolerable stress. So same scenario, the little girl's on a bike, however, she's faced now with a new danger. It suddenly starts raining and these big puddles form on the bike path. So she grips the handlebars tightly. This time she's feeling a greater level of stress because the danger is increased and is lasting a lot longer. Now she still believes she can make it home safely. And why is that? Well, because she's been in the situation before. This just happened. Maybe it happened last week. Oh, I've experienced something like this. She knows she has a skill to do it again, and that gives her confidence. And she experiences this tolerable stress, so she can handle this. So next time she faces such a challenge, it's more likely she'll be ready for it. So when does good stress and tolerable stress become toxic stress? Well, now let's think about the same little girl, right? The situation changes again, but it's far worse. It starts to rain really hard. There's lightning. She's having trouble seeing. She takes a wrong turn. She's never been in such terrible conditions. So she's never had the experience of getting through them. She doesn't feel capable and she doesn't feel safe. In fact, she's overwhelmed by fear. This is bad stress. This is toxic. It happens when we're in a threatening situation that goes on and on and on, and we don't feel like we're able to get through it. So bad stress takes away our confidence and makes us question our ability. So what happens? The little girl, she just lets the bike drop and she just leaves. She's like, oh, I'm not dealing with this. She is in a flight mode. Next slide, please. So imagine the glass is your body and the water is stress. If we pour water, which is a stress, into the body can handle it. And that's a good thing, because a certain amount of stress gives us the adrenaline to be able to perform better, at work, when you're on the road in your car, right? If you have a car suddenly cut you off and all of a sudden you get this adrenaline going, that's a stress, but it kept you safe, right? You hit the brake, it keeps you safe. But sometimes the stress is a little bit more than we can handle, and we begin to feel tense, and we don't feel right with the amount of stress, so much so that it's like pouring all the water into the glass, right? And the body simply just can't handle it. That's what we call toxic stress, right? So on the far right, that's toxic stress. That's when it's too much. It keeps going. The toxic stress is pandemics, loss of job, separations, distance learning, that's stress, bullying. And when you combine all that, that's what you get with the water just bubbling over, right? You have a ton of stress. How is your body going to react to that? So when your child feels this amount of stress, unless they have positive relationships around them, unless they have positive adults around them that can guide them and help them through it, it then becomes very adverse to their health. And we're going to talk about that next, and talking about long-term issues. Next slide, please. So this is Dr. Burke Harris, and she has written a book called The Deepest Well that has to do with adverse childhood experiences. And she notes that 2/3 of Americans are exposed to extreme stress in childhood, like divorce, a death in the family, or caregiver substance abuse. And this type of early adversity, if experienced in high enough doses, it literally, she says, gets under our skins, changes our body in ways that can endure in our bodies for decades. The evidence points to toxic levels of stress or strong, frequent, and prolonged adversity in the absence of safe, stable, and nurturing adult. Again, the key here is having a safe, stable, and nurturing adult. It can tip a child's development and psychology. It can trigger chronic inflammation, hormonal changes that can last a lifetime. It can alter the way the DNA is read and how cells replicate. It can dramatically increase the heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, and even Alzheimer's. Repeated or severe activation of stress throughout the body over time leads to damage. Toxic stress can even damage the immune system, leading to a higher risk of infection or development of autoimmune disease. So toxic stress can really it changes the brain and the body and your hormonal system, right? Because what's happening is your body is constantly going into this fight or flight mode, right? It has no chance to level out, to be stress-free. And so then all of these hormones are going into your system, and that causes these issues. But she says, it is treatable, it's beatable. The single most important thing that we need is the courage to look this problem in the face and say, this is real and this is all of us. We're not saying, hey, just get rid of your stress, right? That's part of life. Stress is part of life. It's how do we address it? How do we manage it? How do we cope with it? Next slide, please. So as a parent, what signs of stress should we be looking for in our children? Well, children respond differently to stress depending on their age, personalities, and coping skills. So this list here is not a one-size-fits-all list, right? You know your child better than anyone, and they may lack the maturity to recognize stress behavior on their own. Even for children who are nonverbal, it's important to be aware of changes in their behavior. Some of these changes could be moodiness or short-tempered, clinginess. They start biting their nails, or maybe they start withdrawing from their friends or their family. These are not, again, a one-size-fits-all. These are a type of signs, some signs, but your child. If they normally not bite their nails, then that's probably not stress. That's just a habit, right? So just knowing your child and knowing what to look for, and just being really acutely aware of any sort of changes in their behavior. Next slide, please. Signs of anxiety and stressors in children may cause physical reactions as well. So those are behavioral reactions. So let's talk about physical reactions. And these can be frustrating and confusing to parents, right? But it's important for parents and caregivers to recognize that these issues may be related to feelings of stress. For example, bedwetting. All of a sudden, they just start wetting the bed again, and you're like, where is this coming from? Or they have a decreased or increased appetite. It can help to think about whether these signs typically occur before or after certain activities or events to better address your child's needs, right? So are they feeling a certain way after they've watched the news? Or are they feeling a certain way after they've been, on social media? Maybe they're on TikTok and they've gone into this rabbit hole and you didn't even realize, right? They're 7 years old and they're watching things that they're not supposed to be, or that may be, adverse to them. And so is it happening at certain times? There are some symptoms, however, like fevers, pain, diarrhea, things like that could actually be more of a medical issue. And so, of course, always consult with your child's pediatrician. Next slide, please.
So it's important to really know exactly what's going on in the brain when we're stressed. The more we know about how our brain functions, the better we can self-manage our stress. So we like to use a model using the hand. So just if you hold your hand up, it kind of helps you to kind of figure out where these portions of the brain are and how they work. So first we have the amygdala. The amygdala is the most primitive part of the brain. And so imagine that it's just tucked in the center there. It's almond shaped and it's right in the center of the brain. And it amplifies our emotions. And when we're operating from the amygdala, we react quickly. So the term fight, flight, or freeze applies here. The amygdala also responds to novelty and the new. So it engages our attention as well. Now, the prefrontal cortex is the last part of the brain to develop. And imagine it as being in the front. So it should come as no surprise to high school teachers or parents of teachers that that's the last part to develop. And it may even not fully develop until your mid-20s. So the prefrontal cortex, it helps us make decisions, problem solve, and analyze and interpret our experiences. And the hippocampus is important for remembering details or storing memories. So it is in the back of the brain. Now, when we're stressed or scared, we all can agree that our bodies react in similar ways. Your heart pounds, your palms sweat, your muscles freeze, your knees shake. And this is good if you're in the wild and being confronted by a bear. You either run, flight, or confront the bear, fight, or hope the bear leaves, you freeze. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that helps you make the decisions, is blocked by the amygdala. You stop thinking and just react. We like to think of it as flipping your lid. It's a matter of survival, which is exactly what your body is supposed to do when confronted with a threat like a bear. But we don't live in the wilderness. And so what if your bear is something like a stressful event, maybe a pandemic, loss of a job, illness or death of a loved one, or maybe it's just that Zoom thing that will not work. So what happens then? So actually your body interprets these threats in the same way. From a body's point of view, that bad news comes in the form of inputs like sight, sound, taste, and touch, and pain. And the body responds by increasing the heart rate, the blood pressure, respiration. A surge of stress hormones will also be pumped into the bloodstream. And this chain reaction in the brain happens within fractions of a second. So we can't stop stressful events from happening, but we can plan for how we will react to them, how we will manage them, especially the chronic and toxic stress that we experience, to prevent negative lifelong side effects that the stress hormone creates. Next slide, please.
So how do we explain this to our children, right? Because we want them to be aware and understand what's going on in their brain. You can definitely use the hand model, right? But we also talk about how your brain is like a house. It has an upstairs and it also has a downstairs. The downstairs is where important things happen, right? Basic functions like breathing, strong emotions, innate reactions to danger. This is where we would see fight, flight, or freeze, right? It's like the downstairs of the house, which is where we almost always find the basics, right? The kitchen, living room, bathroom. The upstairs brain is a little bit more complex. It's thinking, imagining, planning. These things come from the upstairs brain. We use the upstairs brain to think critically, problem solve, make good decisions. It's important to note for those of us who have teens at home, the upstairs brain is not fully formed, as we mentioned, until the mid-20s. Imagine so then that you run across this unknown person, right? So this is how you can explain to your child. Imagine you run across this unknown person on your walk home from school. And the first thing that's going to happen is your body's going to go into an alarm mode, right? You notice it, and that's really good because it's going to allow you to do three things, either fight, flight, or freeze. What happens is your downstairs brain activates, and it allows you to be able to react, right? There's a hormone that kicks in. So your upstairs brain shuts down, so you're not really thinking very much. After a while, if you keep walking and the unknown person goes away, then your body begins to calm down, right? Now you're really just breathing normally. You're not hyper focused, and your upper brain takes over. But sometimes the amount of stress is so much that that downstairs system is always on. So we need both the upstairs and the downstairs brain. We need that downstairs brain to work. It saves us from urgent situation. It loops our feelings into logical equations. It's what keeps us breathing, but we don't want it fully in control, and we don't want it on all the time. We need the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain to work together, because if it's always the downstairs brain, if your child is always stressed, if your child is constantly feeling the effects of stress, then they are less likely to be able to absorb their learning. They are having a hard time. Imagine thinking there's a bear constantly. How are you going to learn? How are you going to make good decisions, right? And so our job then is to be that staircase, right? Or that staircase to get them from that downstairs area and put them in the upstairs, or get them back into the upstairs area. And then also to teach them how to do that. Next slide, please. So there are healthy ways in which your child can cope and respond to stress, right? They just need some help and guidance, and you can help in the following way. So at home, create a relaxed home atmosphere and commit to a routine. So family dinners, game nights, and things like that can prevent anxiety and help relieve stress. Having a calm, safe, and secure place to come home to is very important. We're all spending a lot more time on our screens, right? Computers, phones, iPads, video games during this pandemic. We use them for work, to kids use it to play, they use it for school, and to really connect socially, right? Or socially distanced. So talk to your kids about what they see and hear, and monitor what they watch so that you can help them understand what's going on. It's the worst when there's a child that's watching something, they don't know what's going on. They're taking an event, a major event, and they're processing it through a 7-year-old's brain, right? Think about yourself as a 7-year-old going through a pandemic. Would you have been prepared for that? Right? No, probably not. Nobody ever talked to you about anything like that, right? I'm going to give it away. As a 46-year-old, I wasn't prepared for this, right? And so think about what you're watching. Think about what your kids are watching. So there's 3 C's. First of all, who's your child, right? If your child becomes obsessed about certain things, then maybe it's not a great idea to have them have full reign of social media, right? Maybe start looking at those parental controls, right? Content. If there's violent content, just really riles them up. It makes it hard for them to sleep. Maybe it's a good idea for you to choose something positive, right? That they can watch before they go to sleep. The last thing would be context. So you're one of the parts of the context. You know, how are you watching or talking to your child about what they're seeing? Are you talking to them about what they're seeing? Are you explaining, hey, this may not be all true, or we don't really know all the information, or you're going to be safe, this doesn't apply to you, this doesn't apply to us. Another part of the context is, what emotions were you feeling right before you started using the media, right? Next slide, please. So another way to address stress is to keep them involved. So healthy outlets. Provide your child with opportunities with sports, whether it's organized recreation or even it's just indoor dance party, right? Get them moving. Exercise and physical activity pumps up your brain with endorphins. And this is the feel-good neurotransmitter. This can also lead to positive effects in your body, including great, good cardiovascular system, digestive and immune systems, because it helps protect your body from harmful effects of stress. There are a lot of movement-based activities available on our website, at our SEL Families website, that I encourage you to visit later on or after this session. Also, making healthy social connections through like-minded interest groups like scouts or crafting groups also reduce stress. These don't, of course, you have to make sure that you're practicing social distancing and that maybe, that it's in a safe environment. Take those type of precautions. And then also, talk to your kids if there's going to be a change. Maybe they're not going to, spend the day. Maybe, if you drop them off at grandma's house because you have to go to work, maybe they're not going to grandma's, maybe they're going to their aunt's house. Maybe tell them ahead of time, because that can cause stress for a child. They don't understand that things are already chaotic, in the world, and they just see that as just one more thing that's changed, and that you don't want to add or compound to what they're already feeling. Next slide, please. And then think about really listening to your child without being critical or solving problems for them. Provide guidance to teach your child ways to understand and solve problems that upset them. Children often mimic their parents' behaviors. So if you're if you're positive, or you're engaging in positive stress coping skills, then they will as well. Remember that when you are experiencing stressful things like a job or financial difficulties, or maybe even just disagreeing with your partner or your spouse, right? Kids will pick up on your anxiety and stress and will start to worry themselves. Now, this doesn't mean that you just shelter them and they don't know anything and, anything. That's not the point. The point is that how are you showing them how to do this appropriately, positively, instead of in a negative way? It's doing this in a deliberate and thoughtful manner and showing them how you're coping with your stress. Be sensitive to boundaries and the impact that this may have on your child. We also encourage parents themselves to adopt healthy habits, such as exercise and self-care to manage stress in a healthy way. Because even when you tell them, okay, go do your journal, it's much more impactful if they see you also writing in a journal, right? Take time to maybe both of you write in a journal saying, hey, you know what? I think we've had a really rough day today. Why don't we both write in our journal how we're feeling? And so that is such a great way to model to your child the importance of self-care and being able to cope with stress. Next slide, please.
So sometimes it isn't a matter of not wanting to share their feelings. Your child may just not really have the vocabulary to understand their emotions. And this is really critical, is to build that capacity in our kids to recognize how they're feeling so that they can better self-manage those emotions. And one of the best ways to help students understand their experience is to use stories. The stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we see in the world can really help us identify and find our strength. So books can help young kids identify with characters in a stressful situation, learn how they cope, and it's like a model for them. So a quick search online will result in an enormous amount of book suggestions for all different ages. You can, of course, always ask your teachers at your school, but here are just some examples. So Behind My Mask is all about pandemic stress. I Walk with Vanessa can be great if your child is experiencing bullying and you're having difficulty with that. Ida Always is about death and loss. Undocumented it would be great for anyone who's experiencing the trauma of going through our immigration system. Something Happened in Our Town is all about racial injustice. So it helps our students if they can read these. And many of these books are available as read alouds or on sites like YouTube or Vimeo. So watch the video ahead of time. You always want to make sure that it's appropriate for your child and that you're ready to answer any questions that they have. But the conversation between you and your child after reading is the most important part of providing support. And for older children or teens, you can use movies, television shows to start conversations. But we can find stories in the world around us that can help us learn how to deal with stress. Next slide, please.
Okay, so according to Very Well Family, being mindful of participating in mindfulness activities can not only help students manage stress, but also increase their sense of well-being. For instance, one study found that after participating in a mindfulness program, students were more likely to report feeling optimistic. Meanwhile, another study found that preteens reported feeling calmer, getting better sleep, and having an enhanced sense of well-being after participating in just mindfulness for 5 weeks. Mindfulness can help us regulate us and keep us calm. It calms our nervous system. Mindfulness helps children learn how to pause in all types of situations and respond in a thoughtful way rather than just reacting. This skill is especially helpful when they're faced with challenges or stressful situations. Because a child throwing a tantrum is in his or her downstairs brain, like we were talking about. He's so upset that he can't make that logical decision, right? Or yeah, he can't make those logical choices. So he can't think clearly. So when we see that, when we experience that, whether your child is 7 years old or they're 17 years old, right? It's a matter of saying, hey, I can see you're getting red and your face is getting red and I feel like you're getting upset about this, right? Once you've addressed it and you've named it, now what do you do with it, right? So you can guide your child through a breathing exercise or a soothing technique to help them calm down. And this is great because this can be done when they're tiny all the way until they're teens, because it's going to go with them for the rest of their lives. We're just talking about just creating that break between the emotion and the reaction. Because we want them to get back into the upstairs brain so that we're using logic and reason when we make our decisions, right? Because sometimes you're saying, why did you do that? Like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, why did you throw that across the room? You just made a mess, right? And so, well, because you're reacting, you weren't really thinking, you weren't really pausing for a moment. So as we work with our children, we need to continually ask ourselves, and this is for us parents, are they in their upstairs brain or their downstairs brain, right? How can we get them in the upstairs brain? We're the carpenters of that staircase. It's up to us to make sure that the staircase is working. And the better we are able to understand this concept, the better we can really help kids during stressful situations. And, you know, honestly, even if you don't, I would try to do this when you're not in a stressful situation. Just do it when you're, just sitting around saying, hey, let's practice this, and then start talking to them about it, about when they can use it, right? So, because I would not encourage you trying to say, hey, let's try to breathe when they're in the middle of it all, right? So it's probably not going to work. So, really introduce them to this in a calm situation, right? So let's try this real quick. So this is called ball breath, and ball breathing. And so this is actually from Pure Edge, and this is a card that you can actually print out from our website. And these are available in English and in Spanish, and it's a whole set of them, and they're free. And you can either print them out, or you can just download them and have them available as a document on your computer or on your phone. And these are a really great resource. And it gives you the actual instructions on what to say and what to do. So let's start in a seated position, in which they call seated mountain. You take a breath in as the ball opens, right? Technically, we would have a ball here, but we don't have it. So we're going to just use our arms. It's the same thing, right? So you're going to take a breath in as the ball opens. Breathe out as the ball closes. Okay, let's do this a few more times. And one more time. Right? So this is a great way to really encourage kids to just take a moment, and even ourselves, right? To take a moment to level set, to calm down, to get those hormones kind of calm down, get the adrenaline, get all that really calm down, so that our next step isn't something we're going to regret, right? Isn't something that we're not going to be able to take back. And so, or something that's detrimental to ourselves. And so we really just want to show children that these are options and this is available to them. Next slide, please. So really, to reiterate what we're talking about when we're talking about toxic stress, and we're talking about stress in general, but we're really concerned about toxic stress because we understand that stress builds, right? And so you have this going and this going and this going and this going, right? And it's then going to overfill your glass, right? So the absence of a safe, stable, and nurturing adult in a child's life can have very negative physical and emotional results. That's why it's so important to build social support systems for your child. And for those who are finding themselves really struggling, now's a great time to reach out and get mental health support. Seek the advice of healthcare practitioners, a counselor, therapist. If the signs of stress do not lessen, or if your child becomes more withdrawn, depressed, or more unhappy. And this is also available. I mean, I would reach out as well to your child's school counselor. They have great resources that they can also provide. Next slide, please.
So as we wrap up, we would just like to close with what we call an optimistic closing. It's a great way to end a day. It's a great way to end a dinner. It's a great way to end any time that you spend together as a family. And so you may want to write this down. So you begin by thinking about something you learned or thought during our time together, something that's in your head, something that pops into your head as a result of our time today. Then think about something you felt during this session, something that really touched you. And finally, think about something that you're going to do or take away. What action are you going to take? So take a few minutes to jot those things down and set some intention moving forward. Next slide, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so there was a question earlier regarding, where can parents find out more information about these topics? I am so very happy to share with you that our social emotional learning department and myself as a family engagement coordinator, we've created a family discussion series. The next series is going to, or the next session, I should say, session 4, Parent Teacher Conversations, is on February 17th. This is where we talk about interactions that can sometimes feel intimidating and stressful, which is meeting your child's teacher, right? That's always very stressful because you never know what's going to happen. And you can sign up using the link provided or using the QR code. Also, I would like to tell you that we have already had 3 different sessions. The first one was Introduction to Social and Emotional Learning. And this is when we talk about different competencies in more detail. So I would really encourage you to, and this was recorded, so you can go on our website, SEL Families, dallasisd.org/SEL Families. And there are 3 different videos right now. The first one is about SEL, an introduction to social emotional learning. And it's really great and amazing information about social awareness. How do children identify their emotions? What do they do with those emotions? How do they interact with other people? How do they make those responsible decisions, right? And so they are all available on our website. They've been recorded and there are supporting resources to go along with that. So I encourage you to register. Our next one, like I said, is February 17th. And we will have a Spanish interpreter available for the session, which is always great. Next slide, please. And then this is our website. Again, we do have resources available in English and Spanish and Kirundi and Arabic and Chin. We have a ton of different resources. I would encourage you to sign up for our SEL in Action at Home. It's a newsletter available in both Spanish and in English, and it provides you with a lot of different resources, videos, books, books for children, books for parents. And this resource is not just for children. It's for you to talk to your children about it, but it's also resources for yourself so that you can understand as a parent, just different parenting tools. We have videos and podcasts and printables and much, much more. These resources are available again in different languages, and we really just invite you to visit our social emotional learning website and just really share your journey with us. And we, I think, are going to be, I don't know if we're within time, or we still have time or not, but we'll still be available for some questions, to answer questions afterwards. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. I think we are going to go see some of the questions that were online.
Okay.